everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. Today, I have a special video all about starting your own home library collection. So maybe you have never collected before, you're just starting today, or maybe you've been a collector for a while and you're just looking for some new tips and tricks to think about. Whatever your reasons for watching this video, hopefully something within here will spark some interest or will give you a hand in building your own collection. So why start your own home library? You have public libraries all over the place. You have the internet, you have Kindle Unlimited. Why do you need to have collections of the written word in your own house? Well, for lots of reasons, primarily because a home library is a reflection of who you are as a reader. It's going to shift and change over time. The collection you have today will probably be very different from the collection you have 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. It's an ever-evolving thing, and it's a great way to sort of track your own personal interests over time. A personal library is a living thing in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that I know I collect books, and one of the reasons I know a lot of other people are also interested in the hobby as well. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into some of the tips and tricks that I have for people out there. All right, tip number 1, collect what you like. I know that seems pretty obvious, but with the advent of social media and things like Bookstagram, BookTok, BookTube, we're constantly hearing people tell us what the next big thing is going to be. You know, everybody right now is all about Fourth Wing, but if you don't happen to like fantasy, if you have zero interest in dragons, don't let that dictate the fact that you need to have this particular book on your shelf. Maybe you love Westerns. Maybe you prefer graphic novels to standard novels. Maybe you just want to collect the complete works of Agatha Christie. You do you, because as I mentioned, a personal library is a reflection of who you are at any given time. So don't let it be a reflection of somebody else. The peanut gallery really should have no say as far as what you definitively pick up. Yes, absolutely. Take inspiration from other people's beautiful shelves. Take inspiration from a booktuber that you really respect as far as their opinions go. But definitely still keep in mind that these shelves are you and belong to you. You are your own head librarian, and that's what makes this hobby so much fun. You get to make all of the final decisions. That's not to say you shouldn't explore different genres or different topics that you might not normally do, but when it comes to physically owning something, make sure that's something that 100% you want to have as a part of your collection. Okay, tip number 2, decide what kind of library you want to build. So personal libraries tend to fall into one of about 3 categories: a reading library, a collecting library, and a bit of an amalgamation of both. So me personally, my library happens to be a bit of an amalgamation of both things, but that doesn't make it the best method. It just means that's what works for me. In a reading library, we are talking about a collection that consists of books designed to be read. So that means you're not concerned about creases on the spines. You don't mind bent edges. These are books designed to have day-to-day lives, designed to be read on the go, wherever you are. If you want to fling it into your bag, it's not going to be the end of the world if it doesn't return to your house in pristine condition. These are sort of your journeyman's books. When we're talking about a collector's library, we're not necessarily talking about someone who has first editions of books that are thousands and thousands of dollars. That's not what I mean here. I'm talking about people who have limited editions, collector's editions, books that mean a great deal to them, that they know are going to stay on their shelves essentially forever. You have companies that do beautiful, beautiful press work that are hundreds of dollars on the regular, but you don't have to be buying those. I happen to be a massive horror fiction fan, so I really enjoy special editions of horror classics like this Dracula. This Dracula, it's hardbound, it has velvet on the cover, it's illustrated by Edward Gorey, who I think does amazing art, and it has these really cool bat sprayed edges. Now, I will probably read this copy, I have no concerns about fingerprints or anything like that. But I don't think that I'm going to take it with me to the coffee shop. I'm going to read it at home, probably on a desk, so that I can keep it in as solid and near new condition as humanly possible. So that's really what I'm talking about when we're talking about collectors' libraries. And you also have editions from, say, shops like Barnes and Noble that do the Barnes and Noble hardcover exclusives. So we're, again, not talking about cost so much as we're talking about intent with collectors' libraries. And as mentioned, I have a little bit of both. I don't necessarily focus on one or the other. I collect the books that mean a lot to me, either because of sentimental value or because I'm really into a genre or whatever. But that's what works for me. And if it works for you too, great. But if you would prefer just to have like a reading library or just a collecting library, you do you. So tip number 3, decide what kind of edition you want to collect. When I'm talking about editions, I mean, we're talking about hardbacks. So the ones that you're going to find most often will be like this, where they do have a hard-bound book with a slipcover, though that's not always the case. They are going to be quite sturdy, but they're a little bit less portable simply because of size. And they're also going to be a little bit heavier simply because of that hard-bound binding. Do you prefer instead trade paperbacks? These are the paperbacks that are a little bit larger. They do, however, tend to be bound in such a way that you don't have to worry so much about cracked spines, because you can read all the way into that spine without too much trouble. They're lighter than the hardbound, but they are a little bit larger than, say, a mass market. So these ones will be convenient to carry with you, but size-wise, they might not fit into a pocket. Or do you prefer the ever-portable mass market pocketbooks? These ones are going to be the ones where you're going to see the most damage on spines most often anyway, because you're going to have to really push on that binding to read all the way into the last bits of the text. They're super light. I could toss this around with no problem. They're very convenient, and they're also going to be at the most friendly price point. So it really just sort of depends what you're looking for overall. Do you like the look of a certain book style more on your shelf than the other? Aesthetic matters nothing to some people, but other people want a really particular looking shelf. So just keep those things in mind. Now, beyond just deciding between hardbound trade paperback and mass market paperback, we're going to start talking about things like what kinds of special editions, if you happen to like those. So I mentioned already, Barnes & Noble does that whole special exclusive line. It's going to be sort of leathery in some cases. They'll usually have some sort of sprayed edge. This one happens to have gold. It has a little ribbon already attached, and it does have quite nice end papers. So you definitely have this kind of collector's item to keep in mind, and it's more for the masses. It's made in large quantities, so the price points are generally pretty reasonable as far as collectible books go. Or then you have like the custom work ones, like where someone has clearly actively just handmade this particular leather cover. It does still have all of the extras that we were just talking about, but it's actual leather. You can really tell it's not the bonded style. So since each piece is individually done and handmade, price points will definitely change as well. Now, if you are really interested in the way books look on the shelf, you can look at certain book collections. Like I have a collection of very readable, this is my reading copy of Tolkien's Hobbit and Lord of the Rings cycle, and it makes a little design on the back when you put all the books together, which seems really silly to some people, but I happen to like the way those things look. So That's another thing to think about with what books will look like on on the shelf. Will you buy a whole collection just so you can have that design? Now, if you're a classics collector, you have even more decisions to make. Um, because different publishers will do different editions for one particular book. And if you happen to be a massive fan of one particular story or one particular author, maybe you want to have all of those editions. Penguin did this really fascinating collection of drop cap titles. So for every letter of the alphabet, they did a different author and a different book. This is the drop cap for I, and it's Ishiguro, and this is An Artist of the Floating World, and it's a small hardbound, and all of the ones in this particular collection are this particular size. So you can see it's very reasonably sized, and they look really nice on the shelf, but it's also just a really interesting collection of titles. So that's something to also look at. Are you looking for a broad range of kinds of books? And then you might want to look at these publisher designed and curated collections. Penguin also does this Penguin's Classics Deluxe editions. Every single book is going to have a different artist creating it, so they look very cohesive all together because they're all unique to one another, which sounds kind of weird, but it really works. So this is Bulgakov's Master and Margarita, and it could be right alongside James Joyce's Dubliners. Hold on one second. Totally different art style, but when you look at the spines all together, it's really cool because each one, while being different, also sort of fits together. Then you also have things like Puffin Classics. They did this really beautiful collection of cloth-bound children's books. You have then some qualms with collections from publishers. So one of the, right now, super trendy classics collections are these black spined Penguin Classics editions. Really, really interesting when they're all put together on a shelf. But you'll notice this one has a little orange penguin emblem. Same black spine collection, but suddenly the designers decided to shift style, and now you've got a much wider white bar with a sort of non-oranged penguin on there. So those are things that you might come across when you do decide to collect from a particular publisher's curated design. You might get Penguin's 20th Century Classics. Started out orange, shifted to teal. Their modern classics, they started out white spined, they shifted to teal in there as well. So when you do tend to focus on one particular publisher and one particular line from that publisher, be aware that you might have to get used to a different look as you go along. But at the end of the day, it's never really about what the cover is like, but let's be real here, we all will gravitate towards a particular look or a particular style of things in general. So just one more thing to keep in mind when you are building your own collection. Okay, tip number 4, don't be afraid to think outside the box when adding books to your collection. So yes, you can 100% hop online to shops like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, BAM, type in a title, it's going to get shipped to your door within a couple of days. You can add it to your shelf immediately, super duper simple. You could also go stop in at your local independent bookseller, be supportive of your community that way. Usually those booksellers will also give you the option of ordering in, so you're not limited to what's in that particular shop at any given time. But if you're constantly buying new books, it can get pretty pricey pretty quickly. My suggestion is then to delve into the world of used books. You can find some incredible used titles for very good prices that are in excellent condition and will look just as beautiful on your shelf as anything that you'd get from a brand new bookseller. So the first place to check out, I always suggest, call your local library, find out when the next library book sale is going to be. Our Friends of the Library organization holds a book sale about once a month. It's almost always on the first Saturday of the month, but sometimes they'll shift the dates to coincide with big events that are happening in our local village. This weekend, in fact, happens to be one of those. At Milan, we're going to host a Friends of the Library book sale to coincide with the Antique Fest. So you'll find books that are going to be anywhere from 25 cents on up to $1, but it's really hard to find books that are priced at that point and then that cover such a wide range of genres. And that goes for pretty much any library. You can also check out places like Goodwill's. They will usually have tons of books for under $1. The condition of those can go anywhere from really poor to like new. It's just a matter of hunting and diving in. You can also check out local used shops. Those kinds of places will have tons and tons of books depending on where you are. I go over to the local university town, and they have a really great used bookstore that has tons of more academic titles and classics, but you're not necessarily going to find like your latest James Patterson on the shelf. So it's getting used to knowing the places around you and knowing what they cater to. Another really interesting option is the overstock book sellers. So places like Book Outlet online, Ollie's, as far as brick and mortar goes, they will have remainder books that are brand new. Oftentimes they'll have a little mark on the bottom of them that's not obstructive in any way, but those will be, sometimes 80-90% off the retailer price, and it just happens to be just a little later in the date. Maybe they overprinted. It could be for any number of reasons, but you can get some incredible titles for a fraction of the cost, and they'll be brand new. So if you don't like the used book option, there is that. So it's basically, the idea of being a bit of a detective. And again, this is one of the best parts of book collecting for me. I love being able to hunt down the best conditioned copy for the best price. And I've always loved being able to do that. So if that's something that's of interest to you, definitely consider all of those things that we just mentioned as far as adding books to your collection. Okay, tip number 5, don't be afraid to get creative when it comes to book collection, storage, and organization. So, of course, you can have pretty standard MDF bookshelves like I have here. I know the current statistic, I think, with IKEA and their Billy bookcases, which are ridiculously popular, is that somebody somewhere in the world buys a Billy bookcase every 5 seconds. That's insane. So yeah, MDF bookcases, very popular, also very easy to find. Um, but you can also get pretty creative as far as how you build your shelving or create your shelving. I know in college I had cinder blocks and wood planks, and I still will sometimes put together my own shelving units using the wooden crates that you can get from craft stores. Really affordable, quite sturdy, and they'll hold up to heavy volumes, which is nice. If you have the money for it, get custom built-ins. Those are absolutely gorgeous. Who doesn't want a custom built-in bookshelf? Uh, but then you can also just sort of creatively organize your books too. You can figure out a way to put them in piles. I've seen people use baskets as storage as well, little book carts to do separate little curated selections. It's really all up to you. So the main thing is, don't be married to the idea of a shelf if you can't fit a shelf into your living space, or if a shelf is just not something that will work for you at this time. Don't make that be the stopping point on you collecting books. Additionally, organization. So I am pretty much a traditionalist. I organize my books by fiction and memoir, and then I also separate it out into drama, art and architecture, poetry, and that's really it. And each of those sections are alphabetized by author last name. I have seen people do some really incredible uh, organization, like they will do by publisher. I was mentioning, the black spined Penguin Classics. I also mentioned the different kind of collector's editions from Barnes and Noble. I've seen them separate those out, and it makes a really beautiful look on their shelves. I've seen some people do rainbow shelves. I don't personally know how that works because I would never be able to find anything, but that doesn't mean other people can't. That's why, again, building your own library is so much of an individual thing, and you as your own personal head librarian can do that. And if you can find your books, that's awesome. Because it looks incredible. I'm not gonna lie, it looks absolutely beautiful, especially when I see that most frequently done on white shelves, so it looks like an actual sky and a rainbow. It's gorgeous. um, but if that doesn't work for you, don't do it. That's why I absolutely love that, the whole concept of like making your own library and building what works for you. I know for me, I separate out all of my Stephen King books, and I have mine on one of those self-made crate shelves, and it's starting to overflow, so I'm going to have to put up more shelves, but those are all separated out, and it's the only author that I do that for. And whereas again, everything else is alphabetized by author last name. But there are plenty of other people who also have sections and separate shelves for Austen or for Patterson, or it goes on and on. And that sort of leads into my next tip, which is don't be afraid to take inspiration from somebody else. Uh, this isn't plagiarism, it's not like copycatting is not really a thing. So when it comes to shelf organization and design, so definitely watch other people's videos, get inspired by what they do while still keeping true to your own aesthetic. Um, I love watching bookshelf tours. I always think it's really interesting because it gives me new ideas for one, how to organize my shelves, how to create shelves, especially when other people do really interesting things with found objects or whatever. And it also is a good way to get introduced to new titles that definitely fall in the vein of your preferred genres, but that maybe you've never heard about. So yeah, bookshelf tours are amazing. BookTube is great for that. Um, Book Talk if you're just looking for recommendations. And this does tie back to the very beginning when I said don't get too invested in that, because again, don't let someone else dictate what you put in your collection if you're not interested in it, but definitely let it expand your horizons and potentially allow you to find new genres that you might want to further explore. So that was pretty much my whole little spiel on how you can get started on building your own library. If this was at all helpful or interesting, please consider clicking that like button. And if you happen to have any questions, please, please, please feel free to pop them in the comments below. If I can't answer it, I have plenty of coworkers who could potentially have insight into what you're asking about. And I'm sure we would all love to give a helping hand in that regard. In any case, if you've lasted this long, thank you so, so much for joining me. And hopefully I will see you next time. Bye-bye.